Okay, is this working? Yes? Okay. So, good morning. We're gonna start. Welcome. My name is Susie Rush. I'm president of the Scarsdale League of Women Voters. Thank you for coming to the League's information meeting on Scarsdale's nonpartisan election system. As many of you know, the Scarsdale League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization committed to promoting the informed and active participation of citizens in government. And that's what brings us here today. We wanted to take the opportunity to inform the community about our nonpartisan system for nominating and electing individuals to our village and school boards. Although this system is the essence of how we elect the people who run our village and schools, many in the community may not be familiar with or understand what the system is, why we have it, and how it works. So we're going to try to give you the basics with enough detail, but not too much that it is overwhelming. Before we begin, I want to let you know about our annual meeting and spring luncheon coming up on May 8th. We're very fortunate to have Elizabeth Buemiller, the Washington editor of the New York Times, speak to us about women in politics. If you haven't signed up, please see Ann Lyons or go online to our website, lwvs.org. Also, our membership chair, Janice Starr, said that I should point out that if you'd like to renew your membership today, we have envelopes up here. Now I'd like to introduce Linda Doucette-Ashman, our voter service chair, who will head up this morning's meeting. Linda.
I've never worked with a handheld mic before in my life, so we'll see how this goes. So my job here is to help you understand the Village of Scarsdale's nonpartisan system and how it relates to you as a member of our community, a resident, a voter, and a volunteer. But before we begin, there's a few housekeeping items I just want to cover. First, we do have handouts up front. There's an FAQ, a glossary of the terms that we're using, and also a list of the months of the various elections and links to the information that we will be discussing. So please feel free to take those. And second, we ask that you please hold your questions until the end of our entire presentation, so just jot them down so that you don't forget. Our presentations begin as a broad overview and then go into much greater detail as we continue through the presenters, so we thank you for your patience. And third, in this presentation, we will not be covering the judicial nominating process. Okay, so my task is to remind us all about the calendar of elections that we have here in Scarsdale and to remind you all of when you should be informed, involved in voting. Now this is something I moved here about 5 years ago, so putting this together was actually very helpful for me to have this type of visual aid. So the elections here in Scarsdale are for registered voters for those elections governed by state election and education laws, and qualified voters for those elections governed by the nonpartisan or school board nomination committee resolutions. First, you will notice that the months of the year are either shown in red or gold. The red months typically hold elections, and the gold months are where there are no elections. I've indicated in each red month the elections that take place, and we'll briefly go over each one with you and explain what the blue dots are when we get to them. So, first off, I just thought it was a nice opportunity for you to see how many times you need to be heading to the polls here in Scarsdale. So let's start in January. In January, we have the School Board Nominating Committee, the SBNC representative, that election. Noted with a blue dot, as this election is not governed by state election laws. It's governed by the resolution for the School Board Nominating Committee. In March, there's an election for our trustees and, if applicable, the mayor. This election is governed by the state election laws and run by the village. This is for registered voters as defined by our state election law and can be found on the New York Board of Elections website. In May, we have our school board trustees and the vote on the referendum to approve the school district budget. This election is governed by the state educational laws and run by the school district. In June, not every June, there is a federal primary. This is not necessarily an annual election, and this election only involves those registered voters who have declared a political party if that party has more than one candidate seeking a spot on the November ballot. This election is governed by state election laws and run by the state officials. And then you have July and August off, and then September, we come back. There is sometimes a primary election for state, county, and/or local offices. And just like the primary election in June, this election only involves those registered voters who have a declared political party, if that party has more than one candidate seeking a spot on the November ballot, and it's governed by state election laws and run by state officials. Now we get to November. In November, we have 2 elections that we need to vote in. The first one is the election of our federal, state, and local representatives. It's governed by state election laws and run by state officials. The second election in November is an election for the Citizens Nominating Committee representatives. This election, notice the blue dot, is governed by the nonpartisan resolution and run by the Procedure Committee. This is for qualified voters, as is the SBNC election, and it's as defined in the nonpartisan resolution. This will be discussed in much greater detail as our presenters come forward. So this concludes my very brief overview of the Scarsdale calendar of elections. For specific dates of these elections, please consult the online Scarsdale Community Calendar or our Scarsdale League of Women Voters website. Next, we have Renee Baylor, who will provide an overview of different systems to get a name on a ballot. Thank you.
This will be the least interesting part of the presentation. As Sergeant Friday, the lead character of Dragnet, a 20th century network television program, was known to say, "Just the facts, ma'am, just the facts." We will provide a more detailed explanation later. If we repeat ourselves during the presentation, it is intentional. We will begin with a description of the way a citizen can become an elected official. The ultimate goal in any nominating process is to choose a person who will succeed to elective office. Now that you have seen the many voting opportunities for citizens, we will focus on how a person who wants to hold elected office in Scarsdale Village or School District achieves having his or her name placed on the November CNC, January SBNC, March Mayor and Village Board of Trustees, or May School District Board of Education ballots in comparison to those running for county, state, or federal offices. The most familiar avenue is the traditional political party nomination. In Scarsdale, there are 2 local affiliates of the major political parties, the Democratic Town Committee and the Republican Town Committee. They are active in county, state, and national elections. Each political party sets its own rules for nominating candidates to elective office. Participants in the nominating process are resident registered party members. When a person completes the form to register to vote in Westchester County, and this is the registration form, and provides it for the Westchester County Board of Elections, she or he has the opportunity to register in a political party of choice. 5 political parties are listed on the voter registration forms. By doing so, he or she becomes a member of a political party. Registered members of the political party hold a caucus. And if we mention a term that you do not understand, there is a glossary here to help I clarify our statements. Each party determines its own rules for caucus. Participants in the caucus select candidates to run for offices. In the county, state, and national elections, when several party candidates seek to run for the same office, a primary election is held to determine the party's endorsed candidate. Primaries are open only to registered voters, members of the political party in New York State. Other states allow cross-party voting. Each state legislature sets its own rules for primary participants. Each political party nominates one candidate for each open position. Candidates selected by the party to run for office support and promote the party's platform. Party candidates must meet the state requirements to have their name placed on the ballot in compliance with New York State election law and New York State education law. The village clerk or the school district clerk are the local election officials of the districts and oversee the process. Nominating petitions signed by party members are filed in accordance with these laws. The number of signatures, the information on the petitions, the ballot appearance, and placement are all prescribed in the law. The voting machines and election inspectors are overseen by the clerks, who are responsible for providing the proper and orderly conduct of the elections. Now, the nonpartisan election process for local elected village and school positions will be described later, in more detail later in the meeting. I am going to outline the basic process for getting on the November CNC Village or January SBNC school ballots as compared with the traditional party process. Nonpartisan nominations are conducted in Scarsdale elections. Village and school nonpartisan systems are each formalized in separate documents. And this is the nonpartisan resolution and the school board nominating committee resolution of Scarsdale. One might call the two resolutions the playbook or the operating instructions for those two nonpartisan nominating systems. All citizens eligible to vote in Scarsdale are eligible to participate in the process. The nominating sequence begins at the local level in the 5 elementary school districts. All qualified voters in each elementary district are presented with a slate of eligible voter candidates to serve on a nominating committee, 2 candidates for each vacancy. These candidates reside in their respective elementary school district, and if selected in November for the CNC and January for the SBNC, will join their other previously elected neighbors on the nominating committee. How do they get to run for the nominating committee? They are asked by neighbors or volunteer themselves via petition signed by other resident citizens of the elementary school area. This is the only time in the Scarsdale nonpartisan process that presents a contested election to the voters. As with political party primaries and other competitions between colleagues, neighbors, and friends, only one of the deserving participants can emerge victorious. In contested election, someone wins and someone loses. The locally elected candidates will serve a 3-year term on their respective nominating committees. The terms are staggered so that there are new members elected each year as others complete their tenure. In this manner, 2 separate 30-member nominating caucuses are established, one for the village and one for the school district. The nominating committees, with participation from all neighborhoods, meet according to their respective resolutions and are tasked to recommend one trustee for each position, for mayor or trustee on the village board and trustee on the Board of Education. The 2 nonpartisan systems have no platform that selected candidates are expected to promote. Nonpartisan candidates for mayor or trustee, the ultimate candidates for elective office, must meet the state requirements to have their names placed on the ballot in compliance with New York State election law and New York State education law. The village clerk or school district clerk oversees the process. Nominating petitions signed by resident village and school district voters are filed in accordance with these laws. The number of signatures, the information on the petitions, the ballot appearance, and placement are all prescribed in the law. The voting machines and election inspectors are overseen by the clerks, who are responsible for providing the proper and orderly conduct of the election. Now we go to independent candidates. That's independent, E-N-T, not E-N-C-E. Independence with a E-N-C-E is a political party. we're referring to independent, non-political. For elected office must meet the same legal requirements to get their names listed on the ballot in the March and May elections as candidates selected by an established political party or the nonpartisan nominating system. These independent candidates may be nonpartisan or single-issue candidates. They are not governed by rules or customs of the political party system or the nonpartisan system. They must submit a nominating petition with the requisite number of eligible voter signatures by a statutory filing date. The information on the petitions, the ballot appearance and placement are all prescribed in the law. The voting machines and election inspectors are overseen by the clerks, who are responsible, again, for providing the proper and orderly conduct of the election. Now we go to write-in candidates. Names do not appear on the ballot, but are written directly on the ballot by individual voters at the voting site. Special locations are provided on the voting machines. A write-in campaign can be an organized effort as well as a spontaneous action. The voting machines and election inspectors are overseen by the clerks, who are responsible for providing the proper and orderly conduct of the elections. Scarsdale has had competing independent, nonpartisan party candidates as well as write-in candidates appear on the village and school ballot. The League of Women Voters of Scarsdale has in the past conducted candidate debates and produced a local voters guide when there have been local contested elections. Here I have displayed sample ballots, and you can see this is a sample ballot for the school district. And you can see above, when you vote on a school, for the school district candidate, trustee, you are voting for a particular seat in the election. So there is a space for write-in above each seat. So, and there have been contested elections where more than one person runs for a particular seat. And you will see their names listed below the seat that is being vacated. These are ballots that were for the village trustees and mayoral candidates. And here you may vote for any number of positions that are open any place on the ballot. You are not restricted to a column. However, you must in order to appear on the ballot, you must have a symbol and the name of a political party. So you will see on these ballots with each name a symbol and the political party that is they're affiliated with. These are all sample ballots from lever voting machines. They are not the sample ballots because for village and for the village and school elections, we have not gone to the optical scan machines yet. What is a nonpartisan election system? During the Progressive Era, reformers aimed to reduce corruption and patronage, attract a wider range of candidates, and improve government efficiency by limiting the power of the party bosses to control the ballot. To accomplish these ends, two chief reforms were advocated: direct party primaries and nonpartisan elections. Scarsdale opted for the nonpartisan elections in the 1920s. A nonpartisan system does not adhere to a party or a faction. There are many iterations of nonpartisan systems. As example, Edgemont School District has a nonpartisan nominating system for its school board, and both Garden City, Long Island, and Gwinnett, Illinois have nonpartisan systems for their villages. However, each community designs its own operation. The Scarsdale version is governed by the resolutions. The League of Women Voters of Scarsdale supports a nonpartisan system of government. I now turn the presentation over to Deb Morell, who will enlighten us with a local history lesson.
think I'm going to sit, if that's okay. I definitely got the fun assignment here, so I'm going to tell you the true story of the evolution of the nonpartisan system in Scarsdale. Once upon a time, there was a little village nestled in the rolling green hills just outside of a big, bustling city. The village was called Scarsdale, and it was home to many fine citizens who enjoyed a quiet, peaceful life in their bucolic village in a park. The year was 1909. The office of Scarsdale Town Supervisor had been held for the better part of 60 years, first by Francis Secor and then his son, Chauncey. When Chauncey Secor, a Democrat, announced his plans to retire, the Republican Town Committee saw their chance and asked another Scarsdale citizen, William White, to run for supervisor on the Republican ticket. White was willing to serve, but did not want to participate in a contentious political campaign. So, before accepting his party's nomination, White asked Secor whether he really intended to retire from office. Secor allegedly confirmed that he would not run for re-election, and White agreed to be the Republican candidate for supervisor. However, the Democratic Town Committee was not part of the gentleman's understanding between White and Secor, and the party persuaded Secor to run for the supervisor position one more time. There were, of course, hard feelings on both sides, and for the first time in decades, the campaign was bitterly fought, ending with a victory for Secor by only a handful of votes. The Republicans had come so close to winning and openly expressed their intention of running an even more intense campaign in 1911. The prospect of another divisive campaign alarmed many people in the village and prompted two citizens, Cleveland Dunn, a Republican, and John Ross, a Democrat, to collaborate and create a set of principles for choosing a well-qualified and mutually acceptable candidate for supervisor among Scarsdale's citizenry. After applying the principles, Dunn and Ross agreed that the best person for the job in 1911 was Alexander Crane. Now, not surprisingly, in light of the disruptive election of 1909, Crane was not eager to be a candidate, but he was interested in serving his village and said he would agree to do so only if both the Republican and the Democratic parties would nominate him. The parties agreed, and that was the tender beginning of the Scarsdale nonpartisan system. Well, technically speaking, that was a bipartisan system because both the Republican and the Democratic town committees were still involved, although they cooperated to find a single candidate. This bipartisan nominating system worked reasonably well for almost 20 years, but unfortunately the cooperative effort ended in 1930 when the Democratic Town Committee insisted on nominating a particular member of its party for a village trustee position, and the Republicans would not agree. Not willing to regress back to two-party contested elections, the Republican Town Committee opened discussions with the leaders of the Scarsdale Town Club, which was the predecessor to today's Town and Village Civic Club, or TVCC, and ultimately adopted a resolution stating, "We believe that the selection of village officials should be based solely on the needs of the village and the ability of the individual to meet those needs. The injection of politics into our local affairs can only lead us away from the high standard of unselfish service which our village has enjoyed." The resolution proposed the formation of a committee composed of representative citizens from the community who would meet to select candidates for local government offices. The Democratic Town Committee agreed, and in the fall and winter of 1930, the leaders of the Scarsdale Town Club and the Scarsdale Women's Club collaborated to produce the first iteration of the Scarsdale Nonpartisan Resolution and formally adopted it on December 11, 1930. The resolution has been the governing document for the nonpartisan system of nominating and electing Scarsdale village officials ever since. But lest you think that the Scarsdale nonpartisan system is based on an antiquated text from the last century and is therefore outdated, let me assure you that nothing could be further from the truth. The nonpartisan resolution is a living document that was designed to and has evolved over the years to address the changing needs of the community. The resolution has been amended 41 times to date, including changes to protect against election fraud and to allow mail-in voting. The system for nominating trustees to serve on the Scarsdale Board of Education was formally separated from the village government in 1965, when the School Board Nominating Committee Resolution, or the SBNC resolution, was adopted to create a parallel, nonpartisan system for the school district. The SBNC resolution is also a living document and has been amended 32 times to date. These two resolutions are the structure of Scarsdale's nonpartisan government system, but the foundation of our system is the considered and consistent participation of an informed electorate, all the qualified voters in our community who annually nominate and elect capable, dedicated citizens who agree to serve their village for the benefit of us all. Everyone in Scarsdale should understand how our nonpartisan systems work, and that's why we're all here today. And I'll now turn it over to Diane Baylor, who will explain the school board election process.
Okay, these are my props today, and this is what the various committees who make up the school board nominating process look like roughly at this time of year in April. So we have three committees: the school board nominating committee, the administrative committee, and the joint committee. And you will note that there's a lot of colors on here. They're all color-coded. So blue is for Edgewood, red for Fox Meadow, green for Green Acres, black and yellow for Heathcote, blue and gold for Quaker Ridge. And then the neutral colors also stand for various individuals. The tan is for SNAP representatives. The brown is for TVCC representatives. And this off-white is for members of the community at large. So we'll talk about what each committee does, starting with the SBNC and going from left to right. But first, in case you sleep through the rest of the presentation, this is the SBNC resolution. Most of the answers as to the whole process are governed by this document. So if you miss out, here it is. Anything else that I throw in, I just made up. So what's the SBNC? What does it do, and how is it different from the school board? Well, this is the school board. These 7 pretzel nuggets are the members of the Board of Education, and they are the ones who set policy for the school district. They propose a school district budget for a public vote. They hold open televised meetings, typically on the first and third Monday of each month. And they work closely with the superintendent of schools and the entire central office of the school administration, who are not represented by pretzels. This is the SBNC. The SBNC recruits, interviews, and vets candidates who wish to be a pretzel nugget. Note, you cannot be a pretzel nugget at the same time as you are a piece of felt. And also, you cannot serve as a piece of felt on this bulletin board while you're serving on a piece of felt on any other bulletin board to be discussed later today. The SBNC is tasked with the responsibility for judging and selecting candidates for the Board of Education, quote, solely on their qualifications to serve the community. There are 30 voting members serving 3-year staggered terms, 6 from each elementary school. So as you'll see, there's a column of to be named later placeholders. These are the incoming SBNC members. This column represents those who have already finished 1 year of service and are entering their 2nd year of service. And this column represents those who are entering their 3rd year of service and will eventually roll off to the administrative committee. In addition to the voting members, there is also a SNAP appointee who serves a 3-year term, and a TVCC appointee who serves a 3-year term, as well as an impartial chair and vice chair. And actually, the chair and vice chair historically come from among the class that has recently graduated and rolled off the SBNC. So, how do you get to be on the SBNC, you might ask? At the end of the previous year's SBNC season, again, those who have just completed their service roll off onto the administrative committee. And at that point, the administrative committee typically starts reaching out to individuals in each of the elementary school districts to encourage them to run for election to the SBNC. According to the SBNC resolution, at least 2 press releases go out, typically in the Scarsdale Inquirer as well as in online newspapers, and announcements are also made at PTC and PTA meetings and to local civic organizations in the community. Candidates who would like to run for SBNC fill out a very brief bio form. Most of it is instructions. And they also need to obtain a petition filled out by no fewer than 10 signatures from qualified voters, and we'll get to that term in a minute, from within their own elementary school district. And that goes on to a candidate petition. This is what it looks like. There are extra slots beyond the 10 lines, just in case you happen to get a signature from someone who is not a qualified voter. At least you have some backup lines there to make sure you have at least 10 signatures. The deadline for the bio form and the petition are set by the administrative committee, but that deadline must be published with at least 50 days notice. And if not enough people choose to submit their petition and bio form, the administrative committee is required to add names to the ballot to ensure a contested election, which means that if the admin committee has done its job, there are a minimum of 2 names for each vacancy. The admin committee then produces a brochure, looks like this, that's posted on the SBNC website. It's sent out in the mail. It's made available at the public library and at Village Hall. And if there are changes to this resolution, those changes would also be included in the brochure. Generally, candidates for SBNC don't campaign, although they may encourage their friends and neighbors to vote for them or simply to remind people to vote. So who can run for the SBNC? What is a qualified voter? You must be a U.S. citizen, 18 years of age or older, and a resident of the school district for at least 30 days prior to the occurrence of a triggering event. A triggering event in this case would be the deadline for submitting your candidate bio and petition. Although Mamaroneck Strip residents are not eligible to serve on the CNC, they are eligible to serve on the SBNC, the Administrative Committee, and the Joint Committee, and they do vote in the SBNC election because they are zoned for Scarsdale School District and they pay taxes. So now I have my own history lesson, and this was borrowed in large part from the Quaker Ridge Handbook. The Society of Friends, the Quakers, who had settled in the southeastern end of town, built a one-room clapboard schoolhouse in 1815. They subsequently surrendered the structure to New Rochelle District Number 3, and the structure was replaced in 1863 with a Little Red Schoolhouse. In 1866, the Little Red Schoolhouse became part of a new separate Scarsdale School District Number 2 that continued to educate children from Scarsdale as well as parts of Mamaroneck and New Rochelle. That building was replaced in 1901 with a wooden stick-style Griffin Avenue school, and then again in 1940s by a brick Georgian building at the current Weaver Street site. District Number 1 encompassed Green Acres, Edgewood, Fox Meadow, and Heathcote elementary schools, the then junior high school, and the high school. District Number 2 included the Quaker Ridge area of Scarsdale and a small portion of Mamaroneck, and provided education through 8th grade. Under contractual arrangements, pupils of District Number 2 received their high school education in District Number 1. The two districts merged in 1966 to form the consolidated Scarsdale Union Free School District. So on the map of Scarsdale, you see the yellow highlighted portion is actually part of the Scarsdale School District, but it is within the village of Mamaroneck. So how does the election process work? The election is held in January, and there are specific provisions governing snow dates, runoff elections in the event of a tie. To ensure high voter turnout, the election date is typically coordinated for the same date and venue as the PTC's and PTA's membership meetings for the election of their own nominating committees, which are not the subject of this discussion. According to the SBNC resolution, voting is by secret ballot. Mail-in ballots and certifications are available and can be used for convenience without regard to whether the voter is available to vote in person, unlike in federal or New York State elections. You must simply certify that you are eligible to vote and the fact that you are only voting once. The mail-in ballots must be received by the date of the election. And those mail-in ballots look like this. So they, you check off a maximum of two, a maximum, actually not two. You check off a maximum number of however many open slots there are in your elementary school neighborhood district, and you only vote for those within your elementary school neighborhood district. This side is all instructions on what you must do, and there is also a sample for you to correctly fill out your envelope where you are signing across the seal, and this is how it's to be addressed, and this is also posted on the SBNC website. So any proposed amendments to the SBNC resolution are also subject to a public vote at exactly the same time. And as Deb said, the SBNC resolution has been amended 32 times since its initial adoption in 1965. Although information such as the names of the election winners and the total voter turnout per election district is released to the public, the number of votes received by any individual candidate is not. 2 people in each elementary school who receive the most votes are elected to the SBNC from that elementary school district. And if there are any unexpired terms to be filled, for example, if one of these felt pieces were to drop off, then the person receiving the third highest number of votes would fill in to fill the unexpired term. So I happen to know who will be running for next year's SBNC election. I have them all right here. And you will see we have 4 candidates from each elementary school district who are all running and you'll be voting on them in January. Fortunately, I also happen to know who will be winning the election. And it turns out that these two from Edgewood have won their election, and so they have been given a white dot to show that they have been elected. And my assistant, Vanna White, will be showing them to their new place in the SBNC as the incoming first-year class. We do have 2 winners from each neighborhood. We did have a bit of a casualty on the way to Village Hall today, and we lost one of our Green Acres one of the Green Acres members who was running for election. As a result, the administrative committee had to appoint a napkin to run in its place, but the napkin did not win. We do have 2 other winners from Green Acres, and 2 from Heathcote and 2 from Quaker Ridge. So we do have now a full SBNC going up onto the bulletin board. So as Deb arranges the incoming SBNC, I'm now going to talk about the administrative committee and who does serve on the administrative committee. We have an impartial non-voting chair and an impartial non-voting vice chair who then succeeds to the position of chair the following year. We have the 10 voting SBNC retirees from the previous year, and we also have 3 years worth of appointed SNAP representatives, TVCC representatives, and members from the community at large who are serving staggered terms. So this crew will roll off onto the joint committee when they are done, making room for yet a new crew of incoming appointed members to serve 3-year terms. So what does the administrative committee do? They run the SBNC election. So as previously mentioned, they recruit individuals to run for SBNC. They appoint individuals, if necessary, to ensure a contested election. They publicize the recruiting efforts. They generate the bioform. They set the petition deadline. And they publicize all of the election information for the January SBNC election. The administrative committee also appoints an election committee composed mostly of its own members and any additional people they need to conduct the elections. They make arrangements for voting, preparing the secret ballots, tabulating the ballots, and ruling on any matters such as the validity of the ballots. They also solicit donations to fund the election, typically to fund the following year's election. And they incur fairly minimal expenses. It's really just to cover the costs of printing and mailing the ballot. So who serves on the joint committee? Essentially, the joint committee, which is demarcated by the masking tape, comprises the last 2 retired classes of SBNC voting members, plus the retiring members of the admin committee. So this crew that then graduated to this side of the masking tape. And then the outgoing chair of the admin committee becomes the chair of the joint committee. And the outgoing chair, vice chair of the admin committee becomes the incoming chair of the ad committee at the same time as serving as the incoming vice chair of the joint committee. And what does the joint committee do? They elect the incoming vice chair of the admin committee, and they also consider and recommend proposed amendments to the SBNC resolution for inclusion on the January ballot. So what does the SBNC do after they are elected in January? They meet weekly in person, with the first meeting taking place not later than January 31st. And they continue to meet typically every Sunday afternoon, except around school vacations until they have completed their process. The deadline for doing so is March 31st, and typically that translates into at least 6 meetings. Again, in recent years, they've been scheduled for Sunday afternoons. All of their activities are governed by the publicly enacted SBNC resolution, but they also have internal rules of procedure and voting rules that are not subject to a public vote. They solicit qualified voters to run for the Board of Education. And in order to run for the Board of Education, you fill out a fairly simple form that's asking for your information, such as years of residence and address and phone number and so forth, ages, grades, and schools for your children, and then relevant background information, professional, community, volunteer, and so forth that might be relevant to your service on the school board. The SBNC interviews candidates, but that's really just a 15-minute presentation in which the candidates for the Board of Education respond to identical questions. They also vet candidates, which is another way of saying they conduct due diligence, and all of their discussions and deliberations are done in strict confidence to encourage candid discussion and also to avoid embarrassment to any potential candidate who does not receive a nomination. They then vote for one nominee for every open seat on the Board of Education. They sign petitions that are provided by the district clerk for purposes of getting onto the nonpartisan slate for the May ballot. Those petitions are provided by the district clerk. They require the greater of 25 signatures or 2% of the total voter turnout from the previous year's school board election and school budget vote, and that's according to education law. So typically the SBNC members will sign this as soon as they're done nominating individuals to serve as pretzel nuggets. There is no counterpart to the Citizens Nonpartisan Party. There is no campaign committee. As Susie Rush will explain in a minute, there are some similarities and differences between the election process for school board candidates and the election process for village board candidates. The election of trustees for the Board of Education occurs at the same time as the school budget vote, and that is the third Tuesday in May. That is governed by New York State education law, run by the district clerk. It occurs at the middle school, and the school district still uses the lever voting machines. The voting calendar, in case anyone's interested, and all of the statutory deadlines for this year are on this sheet of paper. The cost of running the Board of Ed election and the school budget vote are all borne by the school district. So I will now turn it over to Susie Rush to explain the village side of the equation.
Thanks, Diane. You could leave it down. Okay. Kelvin, you're going to edit this out, right? Okay. So, I am going to stand somewhere where I'm not blocking something. Okay. I'm going to talk about the nonpartisan system to elect trustees to the village board. I didn't want to have pretzel nuggets. I wanted to have actual stick figure people. So we have our village board made up of, why is this not standing? 7 trustees, all of whom are elected by eligible voters to serve staggered 2-year terms, so you don't have all the trustees leaving office at the same time. One is elected as mayor. These are the people who govern our village. The village trustees and mayor oversee the operations of village government, set policy, and act laws that govern the village, and develop and adopt the budget for the village. The day-to-day operations of the village are run by the village manager, who is hired by the village trustees and other village staff. So I've said that these individuals are elected. How do you get nominated to run in the election? In Scarsdale, you get nominated through our nonpartisan election process. Just like with the nominating process for the school board, there's a resolution called the nonpartisan resolution, which looks like this, and is also available online at the scarsdaleprocedure.com website. What is the process? Well, first we have to have a nominating committee which nominates the candidates to run for village trustee. The nominating committee is called the Citizens Nominating Committee, or CNC. So that is this group right here. The CNC is a group of 30 members, 6 each from every elementary school district, and as you know, there are 5 elementary school districts. So we've got Edgewood, Fox Meadow, Green Acres, Heathcote, and Quaker Ridge. As we've heard before, these members serve staggered 3-year terms so that every year 2 members from each elementary school district retire, and they go to serve on the procedure committee, which I'll talk about later. So, Deb, you're going to move, these guys are retiring up onto the procedure committee. So every year, we need to elect 10 new people, or 2 from each elementary school district. That is the election in November to elect members to sit on the CNC. Typically, you'll see in August and September 1 or 2 announcements in the Scarsdale Inquirer or online media, maybe blast through the PTAs asking people to run. Also, members of the procedure committee, the group responsible for running the election, may be calling or emailing asking you to run. Generally, anyone can run to serve on the CNC as long as you're a qualified voter and you've been a resident of the village for the past 2 years. And again, qualified voter is you're a U.S. citizen, you're age 18 or older, and you've been a resident of the village for 30 days prior to the CNC election. Note that residents of Mamaroneck Strip are not eligible to serve on the CNC, the procedure committee, or vote in the CNC or village trustee election. The residents of Mamaroneck Strip are not part of the village of Scarsdale. They pay taxes to Mamaroneck, receive Mamaroneck services, and vote for Mamaroneck offices. That's why they're not eligible to vote in Scarsdale village elections and don't have a voice in the selection of candidates. Residents in the Mamaroneck Strip pay separate fees to participate in rec department activities because they and their children are part of the Scarsdale School District, as Diane mentioned earlier. There are other limited circumstances that restrict who can run for the CNC. Like Diane had said, you can't be on the the procedure committee, the Scarsdale, the school board nominating committee, the administrative committee, or the school board or the village board at the same time. You also can't have 2 people running from the same household, and there are other circumstances that I'm not going to go into now. So how do you run? To run, you submit two things: a brief biographical sketch, which again looks like this and is available online, and a nominating petition. Similarly to the SBNC, you need to get 10 names, your neighbors or friends who live in your elementary school district and are qualified voters to sign. Getting signatures on a petition is similar to when you run for a public office in a partisan election. So if you're elected, you are coming from your particular elementary school district, which is your neighborhood. So the people who sign your petition must be from your school district. There's a deadline by which candidates for the CNC must get their paperwork in, September 30th. We've said before that it's important to have a contested election for CNC. So that means you need two candidates for each vacant seat. If there aren't at least two candidates for each vacancy by that time, the procedure committee has 1 week to add more names of people to run so that there are at least two candidates for each vacancy. If the procedure committee has done its job, there are at least two candidates for each vacancy. That means 4 candidates, 2 for each vacancy from each elementary school district. Generally, that means there should be 20 candidates running because there are 10 vacancies every year, although there are times when someone has resigned early, so there may be an additional vacancy and you'd need 2 candidates for that vacancy as well. You receive a brochure in the mail, which this past year looked like this, telling you who the candidates are and when the election is. The information is also posted online and submitted to the media. Generally, again, the candidates don't campaign to be elected to the nominating committee. They may encourage their friends and neighbors to vote for them or remind people to vote. So the CNC election is held in November. You can vote if you are a qualified voter, either in person, usually at Village Hall downstairs, or by mailing a mail-in ballot, which is very similar to the SBNC, looks like this. You don't have to be out of town to use the mail-in ballot. It is a matter of convenience. You do need to follow certain rules, like you have to certify you are eligible to vote and haven't submitted another mail-in ballot. And you sign the seal just like for the SBNC mail-in ballot. You have your envelope and you sign your name across the seal. And you mail it in so it is received by the day of the election. After the election, the 2 people in each elementary school district who receive the most votes are elected to the CNC from that elementary school district. So Deb's going to take the people with the highest number of votes. They've been elected and they are now going to serve on the CNC. So we have the 10 newly elected members. Plus the 20 returning members, and similarly to the SBNC, they were serving staggered terms, so this was year now 2 and year 3. In addition, there are 4 non-voting members. There is the president of the TVCC, who acts as chair of the CNC, the VP of the TVCC, who serves as the chair of the CNC if the TVCC president is absent. You have 1 representative of the TVCC, who is designated from among the TVCC members. And then you have 1 representative from SNAP, the Scarsdale Neighborhood Association presidents, designated by the chair of SNAP. Now that we have the CNC formed, what does it do? It meets at least 4 times beginning in December, by December 15. It invites residents to run for village trustee and mayor if applicable. and anyone can run as long as you are a qualified voter and you submit a biographical information form. Again, also on the website. It hears candidates respond to a set of questions. It vets the candidates, meaning it does its due diligence, and they vote on the nominees. By the time they're done, the CNC has to come up with one candidate for each open seat for village trustee and, when applicable, the mayor. And that's what's called the slate, or the nominees of the CNC. So the CNC announces the slate, and as Renee was saying, to be on the ballot, you have to have be a part of a political party and have a logo. And so ours is called the Scarsdale Citizens Nonpartisan Party. Renee's going to tell us more about that Citizens Nonpartisan Party, getting the names of the nominees on the ballot in a few minutes. And as Renee mentioned earlier, others can get on the ballot either by petition with the requisite number of signatures or by write-in. I want to note here how the CNC funds its expenses. The CNC bears minimal expenses, particularly now that the forms and materials are primarily electronic, although there is the brochure, and it also has to rent the room, which is this room, to meet. Room rentals are paid by the Scarsdale Citizens Nonpartisan Party. So now we've got a slate chosen by the CNC. Then comes the election. It's the third Tuesday in March at Village Hall. You've heard already, it's run by the village clerk in accordance with state election law. There is the voting machine by levers, and you may see election inspectors. So I want to just come back briefly to the procedure committee. As I've mentioned, the CNC election is run by the procedure committee. And I've just lost my page. Okay, so we are going to take one moment. I'm just going to have to wing this. So what I was going to say about the procedure committee is that it's made up of the 10 people who have just retired from the CNC, as well as 10 representatives from the TVCC, one of whom is designated as the vice chair, who is going to serve as chair for the following year, 2 representatives from SNAP, and 1 representative from the TVCC, who is the chair. So the procedure committee, again, must follow the rules set out in the resolution, and it's responsible for running the CNC election. The resolution will tell you when the election has to be, what notices have to be filed, what has to be in the notices, all of that. And in addition, it will determine whether it is going to propose any amendments to the resolution, as well as receive any proposed suggestions to amend the resolution. And if there are any proposed amendments to the resolution, the procedure committee has to give public notice, as well as time for study and public comment, and then whatever proposed amendments that committee decides to put up, it will then put on the notice in the brochure, and voters are to vote on those proposed amendments at the same time that they vote for candidates on the CNC. And as we've heard before, this resolution has been amended 41 times since 1930. So I think just generally you can see that there are similarities and some differences between the school board nominating system and the village board nominating system. You know, one right away that you see is there's a third committee, there's a joint committee that we don't have here for the village board. But certainly the process with the resolutions and the, you know, how nominees are elected to the nominating committees and how they propose their slates to serve either on the school board or on the village board are very similar. So now I am going to turn it over to Renee, who is going to talk about what happens after this CNC selects the nominees for open seats for village trustee.
You can leave this here.
Okay, thanks.
As you can see, we are now entering the stage to elect people to the village board. The Scarsdale Citizens Nonpartisan Party. In order for candidates to appear on the village ballot for mayor and trustees, the nominating petitions must include a name and emblem for the independent body making the nomination as prescribed in election law. And on these ballots, you will see a symbol and the name of the party. In cases where there have been a contested election, the independent candidate has provided his own symbol and his own name of party, so that each of these ballots will indicate contested elections as well as the nonpartisan candidates. And here in the general election voter's guide that is mailed out in November, you will see all the different parties and their symbols. So they are required to have the same, they are fulfilling the same obligation as locally elected village and village officials. The CNC slate must be endorsed by a party that has a symbol. The Scarsdale Citizens Nonpartisan Party is organized each year for that purpose, managing the election campaign of the nonpartisan candidates that were elected by the CNC. There is nothing in the village resolution formalizing a party, but it is a requirement of election law. By tradition, the vice president of the TVCC is the chair of the party. He or she seeks volunteers from TVCC members, former CNC members, and local residents to form a citizens campaign committee. This campaign committee is responsible for obtaining the requisite number of signatures on the nominating petitions and running the campaign. The party relies 100% on donations from individuals and local neighborhood organizations to finance the expenses of running the campaign. Frequently among the expenses are the Scarsdale Inquirer. This is this year's advertisement that was in the Scarsdale Inquirer. And in the past, they have put out a brochure explaining the system. And in the past, but not this year, they have put out a voter's guide, which provides the information of the candidates that the Scarsdale Nonpartisan Citizens Party is endorsing. So the expenses are the Scarsdale Inquirer advertisements, postage and printing of the village-wide March mailing, if they do so, expenses incurred by the CNC, printed publicity describing the Scarsdale Nonpartisan System, a website, and an election celebration open to all citizens. This year, there was no village-wide brochure, but there was, or printed information flyer, but there was the post-election campaign, and these are the candidates who were elected to the village board. We have now covered the avenues for getting onto the ballot for village and school elected office in Scarsdale. I turn the presentation over to Linda Doucette-Ashman, who will bring us to a conclusion.
So first, thanks for your attention through all of this.
Here.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about this. So first, thanks for your attention to all of this. Now that you've heard all about the Scarsdale Nonpartisan System, I just want to take a moment and remind you all and give you a summary of the Scarsdale League of Women Voters' position on nonpartisan systems. And this is a quote from one of our statements. The League of Women Voters Scarsdale has a longstanding position of support for a nonpartisan system in the election of Scarsdale's village and school trustees and directors. In order to preserve and perpetuate nonpartisan elections in Scarsdale, it monitors the operations of the village nonpartisan election system and the school board nonpartisan election system and provides independent review and recommendations to the respective governing bodies. For more information on our league's position, please see our website at www.lwvs.org for our consensus statement on the village system. So we started at the beginning telling you we were going to tell you how to plug in. So where do you, the voter, fit in? First and foremost, get informed and then go vote. Voter turnout is so important in all of these phases, as we've now showed you and linked to you how it plugs into our community and into our system. So first, make sure you're registered to vote if you're not already. And your votes for CNC representatives are critical so that our community has the representatives it needs to vet candidates who are interested in running for either village trustee or mayor. Likewise, your votes for SBNC representatives are critical for their efforts to vet candidates for school board trustees. The next upcoming election that deserves your attention is on Tuesday, May 19th for school board trustees and the school district budget. If you are not registered or have questions about an absentee ballot, you can contact the school district clerk, and I have her information here. On the page. Almost there. Second, once you're informed, please consider getting involved in the process, either as a candidate or as a volunteer in many of the election processes we have, and that includes poll workers. Observe those, they're all posted on the Board of Elections website. Thank you so much for coming, and now I open the floor for questions. Do we have any questions? Beacon.
One question that I know our membership of the League of Women Voters does not preclude our participation in the process, but I'm wondering if that differs for the board of the League of Women Voters. Are they able to run as candidates for either the school board nominating committee or the citizens nominating committee?
Yes, so far we haven't been disqualified. It would have to go in the resolution of either the SBNC or the.
But the league has nothing within its bylaws that's restricted.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking. Yes,
Okay.
The president and the chairs of the portfolios who are studying the SBNC and the CNC elections are not permitted to serve on those. And the voter service chair. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
You said there were 5 trustees on the village board. The 5 trustees and the mayor, am I?
No, it's a body of 7.
It's a body of 7.
Thoroughly confused.
Otherwise, you run into ties.
Yeah, Deb, name everybody.
Mayor John Mark, David Lee is a trustee, Mark Samwick, Bill Stern, Carl Finger, Deborah Pekarik, and Matt Kelly.
And I do want to mention our village trustee, Deb Pekarik, is in the audience. Thank you for coming.
So you need one more stick figure.
No, I have the 6, the mayor. The mayor's on top. He is a trustee, but he has his own, he is elected as mayor, that position.
I recognize it.
Debbie.
I'm not sure, I might have missed this, but the chairs of the school board nominated, the chair and vice chair of school board nominated. I don't know whether you covered how they get selected.
Okay. So the
Here you go, Diane.
need the mic.
Just of the nominated, just the gray felt.
The gray
Those
felt.
On the left.
Right.
Yeah.
So the chair and the vice chair of the SBNC are elected by the previous year's full SBNC committee, and they are typically elected from the graduating third-year SBNC members, unless they don't find someone willing to take that role, in which case they can look beyond. But basically, if you look at the way it's comprised right now, these 2 gray felt pieces are actually one of these and one of these.
So that's not.
They're
really
doing
bad.
double duty.
Oh, they're doing both jobs.
They're doing both, but they're not the same season. So the work that the administrative committee does in recruiting candidates to run for SBNC, that work starts now and continues into the fall. And then the SBNC, the newly comprised 30 voting members, they begin their work at the end of January. So they're doing double duty, but not at exactly the same moment in time.
And then the 2 gray felts move on?
So these 2 gray felts, who are the current, or these are the gray felt pieces that will be chairing next January's SBNC. When they are done with that SBNC season, because they also happen to be 2 of these, when they're done with that year, they roll on to joint. It's also the case that these gray felt pieces also typically come from the same pools of previously elected members of SBNC who have rolled off.
And that, is different on the village side for these committees, because you have the TVCC as your leaders, who are not elected. They are as I said, the TVCC president and the TVCC vice president, who acts in lieu of the TVCC president if he is not there, as chair. And similarly in the procedure committee, it's the leadership is the TVCC with the 10 representatives in addition. Lena.
Okay. I should probably know the answer to this. In order to become a member of the TVCC, must one be a resident with, the right to vote?
I want to ask Dan, who is in the audience, Dan
Can I
Hockford.
repeat that into the microphone?
Dan Hockford, who's in the audience, who is.
Repeat the question.
Repeat the question into the microphone.
Do you need to be a qualified voter to be a member of the TVCC?
I'm not sure because we have this separation of the forum and the TVCC. I can say for fact, you can be a member of the forum and not be a resident. For example,
And not be a qualified voter. You must be
Not a
resident of
qualified
Scarsdale.
voter. You can be a member of the forum and not a resident of Scarsdale. For example, Steve Franz, who chaired the Sustainability Committee, was a teacher and a principal in Scarsdale, but not a resident. And Ben Boykin is another one. But I'd have to go back and look at the bylaws of the TVCC to answer that question conclusively.
But that's a good question.
Yeah, because
I'm sorry.
potentially, you know, we have so many people in town who pay taxes, and this is a way for them to participate in our democracy. And if nothing else, you know, there's membership in the Scarsdale Forum. Any resident of Scarsdale can, you know, send in their dues, become a resident. Non-residents, Dan is correct, must be approved by the board of directors. But, you know, I want as many people as possible to participate in our, you know, democracy one way or another. And I'm wondering, you know, the CNC has a party after the election. Is there a party open to the public for the school board after the school board elections? Do you have a celebration?
Well, at the vote, at the middle school, everybody's there.
That's true, but there's no cake.
No public celebration? Okay.
No formal celebration.
I'll give them
And-
pretzels.
Maybe we can add that to our questions when we edit this on the TVCC, once we get the answer.
Very good.
Can you
Uh,
join the
Deb.
TVCC separately from joining the forum?
The question was, can you join the TVCC separately from joining the forum? And I'm going to ask Dan again.
Again, there was a question relating to what you could do as a member of the TVCC, and that's the question I can't answer conclusively.
Okay.
I think I can.
Oh, BK.
As a former president of the Scarsdale Forum, the TVC membership and the Scarsdale Forum membership are one and the same. However, in terms of selection of people for the procedure committee, the TVCC reaches out to the community, and sometimes their representatives have not necessarily been members of the forum or the TVCC. We look for people willing to participate in terms of the procedure committee. We have, in terms of the I don't know if you pointed it out, Susie, but the four administrators of the Citizens Nominating Committee, 3 of whom are TVCC people, and the SNAP rep, none of them vote in the process. They do not select the slate. They are administrative of the process.
That's correct. The leaders are non-voters. And we have a chart that, because I know there is some confusion with the TVCC and the Scarsdale Forum. We have this, it's a graphic that tells you the relationship. This is actually an appendix to our study, a nonpartisan study that we did in 2012 on the nonpartisan election system as it relates to the village board.
And just to add with respect to it, there have been many times in which the TVC reps in the school board nominating committee, the administrative committee, and the joint committee, they have not necessarily been members of the Scarsdale Forum and the TVCC. Again, there is always an outreach of people within the community who are interested in serving as those reps. So they don't necessarily belong to the Scarsdale Forum.
I think we should clarify that the Scarsdale Forum as an institution has nothing to do with the nominating systems. And it is only the TVCC, which is why we have not mentioned the forum.
I understand that, but our membership is the same.
So just to repeat that, the membership of the Scarsdale Forum and the TVCC is the same.
You're automatically also a
Okay.
member of the TVCC.
Okay.
I think
term on the procedure committee? When is that? How long do people serve on the procedure committee?
Term for procedure
that's
committee.
1 year.
1 year?
Mhm.
You have to speak into there, or else you don't exist.
Sorry, 1 year.
Just to provide more information from the resolution, they're entitled to serve 5 years. So they can be asked to serve again, but at least with respect to the TVC, TVC reps. And the group that's coming from the graduating class, they only serve that 1 year and they're off.
Okay, so you're saying that the retirees
They
only
serve
serve 1 year, but I think BK is trying to say about the TVCC reps, the 10 designees of the TVCC can serve up to 5 years.
That never happens.
Okay, Karen.
What do the white dots represent, and what are the 2 white dots versus the one
We were
white
just
dot?
trying to show how even though you're coming from a particular elementary school district, once you come onto the Citizens Committee, CNC, you're all the same. You're all trying to, your objective is to find a qualified candidate to serve on the school board. So it's, you no longer have your colors. You know, we could have turned it over to be white, but we didn't, so we put the white dot. 2 dots indicates that you've retired and you've gone up to the next committee, which in this case is the procedure committee. In that case, it was the administrative committee, although she doesn't have 2 dots. See, this is what, yes, this is what happens. You have independent people putting different things. Lisa.
So, with the graphics are really great because what's become evident, I'm not sure if everybody, it just might be interesting to note for anybody who has never paid attention in this detail before, that Democratic and Republican Party system doesn't seem to have a role, correct me if I'm wrong, in this level of elections at all. So what's happened because of the non-party system is that we've created this one party that can be comprised of Democrats and Republicans and Greens and Reds and Purples and whoever they are. So the Democrat and Republican parties only are relevant in national elections or county, state, and national elections. Okay.
And even local, you know, I call local meaning Westchester, we just said county, so yes.
So maybe, I mean, I don't, it's not really a question, but it just sort of became clear to me that one of the real benefits of this system is that you've created, or it's created, a conglomerate party. And that just never really came out very clearly until I was listening to this whole thing. And that might crystallize for some people the benefit of it, as opposed to what I have always been thinking was that in the beginning of the presentation was we did this to avoid contentious elections. I think that we did this and that because of this, it's created a conglomerate party that is composed of representatives from all parties, and therefore in it of itself, it's getting rid of some divisiveness is a real benefit. Because you could just say if you put strict campaign finance limits on it, then you wouldn't have a problem with contested elections. But this is a benefit that wasn't so clear to me as it is now.
I will add to that by saying that is the reason that the Scarsdale League of Women Voters is unable to be a participant in the system because it is a political party, and we are not able to be participants as a league in the party. At one time, before we recognized the fact that that this is a political party, the League of Women Voters did have representation on the administrative committee and on the procedure committee. But once it was determined that this is a party, we have to withdraw.
BK and then Deb?
I just wanted to add, in terms of your comments, that at least I know the Scarsdale Democratic Town Committee has to formally meet each year and determine whether or not it will run a candidate in definitely in the village elections. I don't think I'm a member of that particular committee, so we convene and discuss the nonpartisan system, discuss the possibility of running a candidate. As far as I know, the time that I've been here, we've always not run a candidate for a volunteer, non-paying elected position. benefits, I think, is that it doesn't take the politics out of the room in terms of selecting candidates. There will always be politics. It's taken the money out of these elections, which is definitely a problem now in the political system in general.
Thanks.
What I wanted to find out was, how was the TVCC originally involved in the with the Citizens Nominating Committee? How did that originally
Renee,
occur?
you have-
Because if you look at the chart, just visually, you see a whole lot of brown on the top and a whole lot of brown on the bottom. And it's just sort of like, it's just, you have all these elected people on the CNC that don't come up to the level of the procedure committee as in leadership positions as the school board nominee.
You might, the TVCC, its forerunner, the town club, was one of the originators of the nonpartisan system. The town club and the women's club, as Deb provided the history, and it has, initially, it was the financial arm as well of the system, and they financed the whole village nominating system. As the procedure committee initially was composed many, many years ago of 2 League of Women Voters people, 2 Women's Club people, 2 SNAP people, and 2 town club people. Over the years, those positions, those groups withdrew participation, and the town club, being the custodian of the nominating system, filled in, and that's
Including the village club.
The village club
well,
and
the village,
merged. They
yes,
merged.
the village club was merged, so the town club became the TVCC. So this is sort of the migration and the evolution of the system.
Are there any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank
I
you.
think that BK wanted to make an announcement.
Do
you wanna turn the over to the maps?
She's deferring to
You were
Dan.
part of the membership meeting that's coming up with the Scarsdale Forum.
I think it's a public service announcement because of the change of location. Normally, we don't.
Appreciate it.
On Thursday at 7:30, the forum will be holding a meeting at the high school. Now, historically, we've held all of our meetings in the Scott Room of the library, but we've heard that there's likely to be a large group, some from out of town. We have 3 panelists. We expect Thomas Hagerman, our superintendent, to lead off. A newly elected regent, Judith Johnson, who represents Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, and Orange counties, will follow Thomas. And our assemblywoman, Amy Paulin, will follow the other 2. Our chancellor of the Board of Regents has promised me she would be in the audience. And that's one of the reasons that many people want to attend is they have found some of the positions that Merrill Tisch has taken, ones that they want to question her on. We're not positive she will be there, but that is one of the reasons we've had to move the, because of the crowd that is apt to be attracted. And the library just does not have significant parking if we get over a certain level. There's also been some concern that perhaps people from other districts will misbehave, and I've asked our police chief to have an officer in case we have the need for that. Any questions on the meeting?
Thank you, Dan. So before you go, if you want to take a look at the maps, this does tell you the school district, And the shades obviously tell you the elementary school districts. And then here is a map of the village. And we thank Village Hall, Steve Papalardo, and who else? Donna Conkling for the maps.
Allowing us to have maps.
And
created by the engineering department.
yes, created by the engineering department. And I also want to thank Kelvin Guevara, who is taping this program, and his staff. So thank you again for coming.
You guys did a wonderful job.